Hey, good morning, everybody. Or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching this training. My name is Evan Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Northwest New Mexico Council of Governments. This is going to be a short training on the GRO program. We'll get into that in a second. But just as a quick background, the Northwest New Mexico Council of Governments is a regional planning and development agency covering kind of the northwest corner of the state. There's actually 7 councils of governments or economic development districts in the state that cover all of the 33 counties and all the communities there within. So our counties are San Juan, McKinley, and Cibola. We cover 15,000 square miles, so a pretty vast region, serving over 235,000 folks. And we are kind of a unique dual designated agency. We're quasi-governmental. We're empowered by the state of New Mexico through the Department of Finance Administration's local government division under an annual state grant and aid contract aimed to help communities with infrastructure planning and development and financing, as well as kind of community planning, economic planning in general. So we work with a lot of communities, water associations throughout our region, as well as cities, counties, and our tribal communities to help them figure out the vision for their community and how to put the infrastructure planning pieces in place to achieve that goal. So we're also designated under the U.S. Economic Development Administration as the economic development district for the same region. We basically help to set the global strategy through our comprehensive economic development strategy for the region that helps to inform the economic strategies and projects that are looking to get financed by various federal and state agencies, as well as EDA, the Economic Development Administration. We're a pretty small group of folks, but we achieve some big goals for our region. So just jumping into the training, what is GROW? So in 2024, the legislature created a process called the Government Results and Opportunity Program, now referred to as GROW. It's similar in that it's general fund appropriations for either state agency programs or community-based programs throughout the state. Similar to House Bill 2 junior appropriations that have happened in the past when there's surplus funds at the state level. These have been provided again through the legislature to programs and projects throughout the state of a non-capital nature to help support programs. The GROW program is kind of a revamp of this. And so there's a couple changes hearing from grantees. There was a need to provide some extra timing. So the legislature decided to make these 2-year appropriations, meaning that you can spend funds either in fiscal year 25 or 26, rather than the previous program, which was a 1-year expenditure. It's also different in that the funding for public entities and nonprofits can flow through council of governments like our organization. They can also go to state agencies, funneled down through those state agencies. But there was a specific push by the legislature to use the council of governments as agencies that are based in the communities, know the communities, and can help be efficient with setup and deployment of funding. So again, this is a new role for us. This is a new opportunity for our region. And we are looking forward to trying to help the legislature improve metrics and outcomes. So again, the process is Department of Finance and Administration has issued 14 contracts to our Council of Governments, all that have been executed, signed, and put in play. The Council of Governments then issues contracts to recipients or grantees. And we'll go over the two processes for public entities versus nonprofits in a second. But we've to date have contracts with all of our 14 grantees, been able to get all of those underway. We are responsible for reporting and tracking of each appropriation. Again, some of the reasons for changing the process was just to ensure accountability and efficient expenditure of the funding. So also our Council of Governments, although we're part of we work with the other six COGs in our state, 7 of us in total. We are a little different as our board of directors provides the policy direction for me and for the organization. So our process may be a little different than other Council of Governments. We would just ask that you follow our process if you're one of our grantees. This is a list of all 14, I believe, appropriations that the COG has entered into contracts with DFA and now entered into contracts with the entity or contractors shown here. Again, all of these are under contract and underway at this time. And so we're looking forward to getting this funding deployed. Again, there was a lot of discussion about public versus nonprofit entities. Obviously, the COG is a public entity. We are a special district. And as such, we can contract directly with other public entities for services, such as with the county, city, or other special district. So we drafted and sent out contracts for all the appropriations intended for public entities, and tried to get all of those executed on or before August 1st. And we used a contracting instrument called an intergovernmental service agreement for those. So those were pretty quick and direct in that the intent was to go to a public entity. Nonprofit entities cannot receive state money directly. Therefore, they're not named in House Bill 2. Generally, they have to go through a government agency, which again, in this case, the COG is. The government agency then has to follow the procurement laws within its organization and the state of New Mexico. And so again, we only have one nonprofit project, but we did have an open and competitive process that was required to select a contractor and now our grantee. Our board kind of directed myself to follow our fiscal agency policy, which typically does not include nonprofit projects. We're just not as familiar working with nonprofits and the standards for accountability that they have. So again, we just have one nonprofit project and we're kind of using that as a pilot to see how that all works and goes. But in the future, there may be an opportunity to use the Council of Governments as the pass-through agency for nonprofits. Again, they can all go to state agencies. State agencies have staff and experience dealing with those type of programs. So again, we went through procurement and we were using a professional service agreement as the contracting instrument in those cases. I think one of the things that's really, really important to understand is that all these funds are government funds, taxpayer funded. So there's a high level of accountability with government funds. So they are also all reimbursable, meaning that the Council of Governments has to find a way to put out, pay for the expenses, and then turn around and get reimbursed by the Department of Finance and Administration. So again, we don't have the funding. We actually have to have our grantees expend the funds, ask us for a reimbursement. We ask the state and then it flows back down. So a really important point to understand that this is all kind of a reimbursement process, and it has to follow all the government standards, rules, regulations in order for us to get paid, and then our grantees. So who will you be working with? Again, I'm always here as the accountable person within the organization. You can reach out to me anytime, day or night, and I'll be happy to help you or direct you in any way that can get you to yes, and get things moving. So again, Evan Williams, Executive Director, we did contract for our program administrator and compliance officer, Muriel Plummer. She'll be kind of our back of the office support, but can also be contacted with any questions. She'll be going over all the reimbursement and pay requests, probably interacting with grantees more often than myself. Again, we have a team of folks that work here and will be here to help. We have a CPA to guide us through our financials and our audit process. We have a planning director, Brandon Howe, who's very familiar with the communities, these programs, and can be helpful to any of our grantees. And then our office manager is going to be key to reimbursements and accounts payable for this program. So Martina Whitmore is here as well to help our team. Again, just looking at the process and the flow down that I talked about. So again, every grantee should have intergovernmental service agreement or professional service agreement with the COG that's been executed. That grant agreement or contract is kind of the playbook that we want you to stick to. It kind of lines out timeframes, funding, allowable uses, and gives as much direction as we were provided on the legislative intent for these funds. So again, you should have that. You should refer to it. We'll walk through how you can use that contract grant agreement in a second. Again, for most grantees, we've talked about the intent of these funds, either with the legislators or based on the legislative direction that we were provided, and also the needs of the community and these programs. So again, if you need to consult on scope, budget, and allowable expenses, feel free to contact me anytime. But now that those grant agreements are executed, we expect that you know what you're doing, what you're spending funds on, and are moving forward. Again, this is kind of the setup training. I'm happy to provide one-on-ones in person or otherwise to walk you through this training. But we wanted you to have this at any time to refer back, especially when you're getting pay requests ready. There may be some questions that come up as you're doing that this training will help solve. For some entities, they are subcontracting out for services. They will obviously go through their procurement process to do that and enter into contracts. We would like to get copies of any grant agreement that entities have, as well as any of the procurement process, bids, quotes, and contracts again. So again, some of our grantees are initiating and working through the process of procurement, bids, contracts, quotes. We would love to see and get the copies of all those things for our file that may be required of us to provide. So if you could get those to us, we would appreciate it. As grantees are moving forward and spending funds, again, just keeping track of that and being ready to submit pay requests either monthly, quarterly, or as often kind of as you need to be able to cash flow your programs. You can submit pay requests through our online portal. We've created kind of a quick portal to help us track, respond to any pay requests in a timely fashion. So again, you'll expend funds, you'll submit a pay request following our process, which we'll go through in a second. And then the COG will review that pay request and make sure it's thorough and complete has all the documentation needed. Again, if we're doing payroll expenses, we would like to see those payroll records, any vendor invoices or subcontractor invoices, any proof of payments that are needed. Again, all of that is typically in the process of working with DFA or a state agency, so it shouldn't be new, especially to our public entity grantees. Again, it should all be the same process as either capital outlay or general fund appropriations in the past. We will review that. If it's complete, we will ship it off to DFA, asking them for reimbursement of those funds. They will review it. If they approve it, they will pay the council of governments. Council of governments will turn around and pay the grantee. So there will be a gap of time in here. So just know that there's going to be a review and approval process and a lag so that you're not desperately needing funds the minute that you submit pay requests. We do have a website which has all of our information. That's where you'll find the pay request online portal. We do have some reporting for the legislature, and we have this training for our grantees, legislators, and other interested parties. So that is the process that we expect. Again, we have 2 years to spend these funds, and would like to show the legislature some immediate drawdowns so they can see their funds are in the community working. Now we'll go through the reimbursement and pay request process. Again, if you've worked with DFA, all the requirements should be similar or the same. Again, they've made it a little easier for us. We don't have to do CPMS reporting, capital project management system, or notices of obligation process. But we will kind of lean on some of those best practices as we're getting funds to make sure we have proper documentation. So again, if you worked with DFA, it should really feel the same, except you're just going through the Council of Governments rather than directly. Hopefully that makes things better in the process, as we will be able to check in regularly with our grantees, see the impacts in the community, talk to folks about how the money is working and how it is being deployed and used. So again, we're hopeful that this will be a more transparent, accountable, and efficient process. But we're here to improve it. Like I said, this is a new gig for us. So we take constructive criticism to heart and make sure that we're following a total quality management process of continuous improvement. So please let us know how we're doing. The only difference is that instead of a paper pay request that gets emailed in, a PDF to DFA or sent in, we've just made it on the online portal using SurveyMonkey to kind of tick a number of questions off really quick and then give you an opportunity to upload your documentation. Again, proof of payments, invoices, payroll records. Again, there's the website that you can all go to. It's a tab on our webpage, so you can get there pretty fast for your use. Again, public and nonprofit entities receiving their GRO funds through the Council of Governments are required to use this portal. We would like you to ensure that at least one person is trained at all times. Again, we can schedule trainings with you at any time or date, as well as provide this virtual option and recorded training. There is no login or credentials at this point, so we're just leaning on folks to know who's the approved person, the appropriate person in the organization to submit the pay request. Again, that'll be the person. If we have questions, we'll be leaning on to get answers and the proper documentation. So again, this sets up pretty well on the portal, but just going through the questions. Again, this is the pay request training. I want to walk you through the form and describe kind of what we're looking for, so that if it's not clear, it becomes clear to you. Again, the grantee, it's a pull down bar, so there's a selection of only the grantees that we have that we're working with and have contracts with. So just pull down and select your grantee name from that list. We would ask that whoever the authorized submitter is provides us their name. So again, we know who to reach out for and who we're working with on processing this pay request. Again, the email of that person that's submitting the pay request that's authorized to do so by the grantee, we would like you to fill out the email box as well. So just some contact information on this first three questions. Next, we have looks like I have a little bit of a typo here with the grantee again showing up, but number 4, grantee number, insert the grantee number related to your appropriation. Again, this should be on your grant agreement. It should be in several places, but it's going to look like a number that's 24-ID and then 3 digits. So if you can find that number, that's what you'll put into number 4, grant number. Again, just the title of the project. Again, some of these don't have prescribed titles. So again, if you just want to put your entity name, so we know the location or the grantee, plus whatever type of service that the program funds are being used for. So you can see an example here, Bloomfield, that's the city of Bloomfield. They receive funding for library services. That's a good enough project title for us. So we know that the project title matches the grant number. Again, period of performance is the actual period of activity that you've expended funds for. So again, that could be August 2024 as a kind of monthly period, or it could be a quarter. So it could be July 1st through September 30th, 2024. Again, if you could just indicate the period of performance that you are billing on, that would be helpful. And there's a couple examples here of either a monthly or quarterly date. And just remember, no expenses can be reimbursed before the effective date of the contract, which should be July 1st for all of them. So again, we can go with that as the start date. But anything before July 1st, 2024 would not be eligible for reimbursement. Again, number 5, pay request number. This should just help us track. So if you're doing monthly, you'll probably have 1, 2, 3, all the way to 12 or 24, since we have 2 years. But just put in a number. So if this is your first one, you use 1. After that, it'll be 2, etc. That'll just help us know which pay request we are talking about. The total grant amount is the starting amount based on the appropriation. Again, it should be stated in the grant agreement, and it'll be the same number every single time. That'll just help us with the math to have that total amount that was appropriated for you. Number 7, grant requested to date. Again, this will be the total of the amounts previously requested for reimbursement. So for example, if this is your 3rd pay request, and you had a pay request for 50,000 and a second pay request for 100,000, then you would add those 2 together and you would enter funds requested to date as 150,000. So again, just a running total of how much you've requested to date, whether you've been reimbursed or not. Again, just to help us keep track of kind of the spend down that you're and where you're at. Number 8, amount requested this period. Insert the amount you are requesting for the period of performance and supported by your documentation. So again, if you're submitting for August, 1 month, that should be the expenses that happen in that 1 month, payroll, etc., or purchased equipment or services within that period. If it's a quarter, again, it would have to match that period of performance. So again, you can request the amount that's allowable in terms of expenses and provable in terms of documentation. From there, I just wanted to walk you through some of the questions we just went through. Again, you can see an example here. There's typically the grant number at the top of each agreement or embedded within. You can see after special appropriations project, there's that special grant number. That's number 2. That's where you would find that under grant agreement. Again, a project title is just kind of the combination of who we're in a contract with and the type of services they're providing. You can find that on the first page as well. And then the total grant amount, again, should be in a couple of places under compensation as well as under the next to the grant number. So you can pull those down from there at any time. And then there's just a total period of performance, which is that 2-year window. Again, we kind of cut it off a little bit early because we have to close out our fiscal year. So again, basically 2 years is the total period of performance. Total compensation, and some grant agreements have a limitation to only provide for personnel costs. So you will see the total grant amount under compensation, as well as any of the limiting language in terms of allowable expenses. And again, we can consult, talk about those things, make sure that that will support what your program needs. Again, we're trying to cut down on the amount of tracking in terms of some of the expenses to make sure we're able to track the government funding throughout the process. So again, looking for ways to support your programs that'll be pretty direct. So again, this is the documentation section. It should allow you to combine a PDF and submit one document here. So not multiple files. If you could just PDF all of your documentation into one file and upload it to this section, that would be great. Again, any invoices, or we would need invoices, proof of payments, pay stubs, and all other required documentation based on the expenses you have. Again, we want to make sure that we have documentation that can go to DFA and is required by DFA for their approval. So again, in a single PDF document, we would ask you to compile your invoice. So from your entity, what are you asking for reimbursement, the total, and that should match your question number 8, amount requested this period. So again, just start with your invoice there and make sure those numbers are matching. If you're paying for personnel fringe costs, again, just ask you to submit the pay stub within that period of performance. You can black out any sensitive information that's not needed, but just to make sure that we're able to prove out that this funding was used for those personnel folks. Other expense documentation or invoices, either from your subcontractors or items procured from vendors. Again, if you're buying equipment, those type of things, we would ask for invoices, documentation, and then proof of payment is really important to show that you've expended the funds. Again, since it's a reimbursement program, anything like a canceled check that you paid for these expenses, that would be perfect to allow us to know that you've expended the funds and this pay request will get you reimbursed. It's optional, but any other reporting metrics that you want to collect, again, the legislature does want to know and support good programs and good investments. So the more performance metrics we can collect and show them the impacts, I think that would be good to provide to us, and then we can provide to the legislators, or all, you can provide it to all of us. So there is a couple questions in here that aren't required, but again, any project details, issues, milestones, just the legislator asks us, how's it going, what's going on? We would have a short narrative to provide them on the status. And then how many total beneficiaries did your project serve during that period of performance? So if you helped, 100 families with your program, that would be a perfect number. Or if it's families, maybe, there's 4 people in a family, 400 beneficiaries. So again, just kind of understanding how your program is serving the community and doing what was intended. Again, just the compliance section that everything you're submitting is complying, is in compliance with state regulations and law. Again, we would just ask you to put a date of submission. So again, date, time. That way we can start the clock on our end, start tracking these pay requests from the minute they come in. You'll hit done and that should submit. I'll probably give you an acknowledgement email that things have been submitted and then an approval email once you've reviewed. And then an understanding of how long the process will be to get reimbursed. Again, we're looking at this as kind of our new program, but we know that the turnaround times are very important to get you reimbursed. We know most entities need cash flow to run their programs, run their organizations. We know that because that's how we run, is a lot of stress in making sure we're getting repaid for services on these reimbursement programs. So our goal is really to get busy as soon as we get the pay request. I believe we can do an internal review within 24 hours. If it's all approved and doesn't need any corrections, we can definitely get that over to DFA. Not sure about DFA's approval process, but typically, runs a couple of weeks and can move faster. Just depends on kind of the time of the year, staff availability, et cetera. So again, we will do our best on our side for things that we can control. And then DFA will do what they do in terms of review, approval, payment. Again, we cut checks twice a month, so shouldn't be any more than 14 days to get a check out to you. So we're just estimating conservatively 30 to 45 days on these reimbursements from the time that the pay request is submitted. Again, our goal is to cut that down and get these as fast as possible to you all. If you're not getting things timely, again, please call me and I will get on it. And I will get on it and get it moving. Again, just some of the questions that have come up in our conversations and trainings. Can I get money advanced to my entity? Again, no, these are all reimbursement based. We understand kind of, we're all excited to get these funds. And then we find out that we have to follow all the government rules and it's a reimbursement process. And so that's just the way it is. But we can work with you, but we can't advance any kind of funding out of this program, the GRO program. Can I buy equipment, supplies, and expend on capital outlay? Again, we haven't gotten any written approval from DFA that these would be reimbursed or allowable. So we're kind of hedging on the side of being conservative. So we've asked most entities, unless it's specifically in your scope and we've kind of negotiated it, that we just direct this to operational costs. I think it's the quickest and cleanest way to get your program, to fund the people that are working on these programs. Again, that was really the intent, was to get operational funds. Again, if you need capital outlay, that's a different request process. And those are available through legislators and the governor. And there is a process on the New Mexico legislative website for capital outlay dollars. Again, tracking supplies and how many books you bought, that becomes very cumbersome in terms of reporting and tracking whether those books are there. Again, we'd have to really track those on fixed inventory, make sure that everything we bought was trackable for a number of years. So again, we've pushed a lot of our grantees to operational costs, but we're happy to talk to you about what your needs are and talk to legislators about their intent. But hopefully it's all about these programs and getting the funding deployed. So you all that are the grantees and know best where the money needs to go, get it where it needs to go. Can I expend the amount sooner than the 2-year period? Absolutely. We would encourage entities to kind of front load this funding. Again, just to be able to show legislators what the real need is. And also to show that we can move this money pretty fast once we're given the guidelines and the requirements. So again, we would encourage you, spend this as you need it. If it's better to phase it out over 2 years, we understand that, but again, some folks would like to spend it in a year or less than a year, and that's totally fine with us. And I'm sure totally fine with our legislators that the money is being used as soon as it's available. Again, just last day when you can submit final pay requests, again, we do cut off towards the end of June, which is the state fiscal year, because we've got to close the books. So again, you can incur expenses all the way to June 30th. That's allowable in the contract. It does talk about kind of earlier in June of getting those. So we would like to get your final pay request by June 11th. 2026 in order to close projects out by June 30th. But absolutely, we've got to have those in by July 10th. So if you're running expenses down to June 30th, we understand that. We would just ask you if you could get those together, provide documentation and get everything in by July 10th at the latest. Again, there may be a delay just because we're closing out the books, so it may take additional time above the 30 to 45 days get you repaid if it's at the end of the fiscal year. But again, those are very good questions. If there's more questions, again, please feel free to give me a call or my team in order to get those answered. Again, appreciate everybody leaning into this training. Hopefully it was helpful and help guide the process. Again, my name is Evan Williams. You can reach me anytime and happy to help grantees through the process, answer any questions with legislators. Again, we want this process and program to be transparent, accountable, and efficient. Thank you for your attention and good luck on producing great results for your community. Thank you.